G'day, Sweaty Legends, and welcome back. We are on chapter 8, and we are back again with Ryth today. So, without further ado, since it hasn't been weeks between me posting these videos, I will just crack straight in. So, strap in. You want me to come in? Nick asked as he stared at the entrance to the school. Or are you good from here? My pulse was thundering, my panic out of control, but I just swallowed, clutched my MacBook to my chest and yanked the door handle. Thanks, I got it. My cheeks burned, even as I dropped my gaze and nervously tugged my hair lower. Don't look at me, please don't look at me. I passed a group of girls as they crowded the sidewalk, but they didn't laugh at me. They didn't even see me. Holy shit, is that Nick Banks? One of them muttered, staring. The midnight Mustang idled heavily, throbbing, growling, drawing every female gaze in the vicinity. Of course they knew him, especially the girls. I mean, why wouldn't they? Broody, dangerous, intensely good-looking. I'd notice too, if I wasn't living with them. Notice and what? Panic? Tobias crept into my mind, his cruel pinch of my breast, the way he trapped me with savage stare. You want me to drive you, Ryth? I hugged the laptop tighter against me, shoving the memory of him down until it left that throbbing sound of the Mustang to push in. I half expected Nick to pop the clutch and roll past the school like every other rich hothead did. But he didn't. Instead, he idled the car, slowly crawling behind me. Hey, Ryth, he called out, lowering the passenger window. Fire lashed deeper as I jerked my gaze over my shoulder. There was concern in his eyes as he motioned his head at the drop-off point. I'll meet you here later, okay? I just nodded, turned and scurried, feeling the heat of attention as I hurried for the admin building. It had been days since I'd agreed to come here, just enough time to try and forget what asshole Tobias had been in the kitchen, and just enough time for the storm of panic to build at the thought of starting a brand new school halfway through my last year. Creed Banks had called ahead, and of course everyone was more than accommodating. Why wouldn't they be? Rich and powerful, what he wanted, he always seemed to get. All I wanted was my dad out of prison and my family back together. I shoved through the doors, my sneakers squeaking on the vinyl floor, and I scanned the entrance, caught the sign, and headed for the office. When I pushed through the doors, it was quiet. A few younger kids were sitting on the bench, and one guy was standing idly by the display, loaded with pamphlets. Help you? An older woman called over the counter. I licked my lips and tugged my hair lower, holding my hand over my face and stepped closer. Ryth Castlemaine, I'm here to start classes. Oh, Ryth, yes, we've been expecting you. She smiled, then lifted her hand, motioning to someone behind me. I glanced over my shoulder at the guy standing beside the pamphlets, then jerked my gaze away. He was gorgeous, with dark brown eyes and dimples. When he turned to me and smiled, panic rose inside me as I turned back to the woman. What are you doing? She smiled carefully, then frowned. Getting you an escort. Gio here has offered to show you to your classes. I don't need that, I muttered as the sound of his steps grew closer. I just need a schedule and a map. Nonsense. She met Gio's gaze and smiled at him. It's good to make friends, especially on your first day. I didn't want a first day. I didn't want friends. I just wanted a class schedule. How fucking hard was it to give me a damn schedule? She reached to the side, grabbed something from behind the counter and handed it towards me. Welcome to Duke's, Ryth. I hope you'll enjoy it here. I forced a smile, took the paperwork and turned away, wanting to sink into the floor or the wall and hide. I forced a smile. Whoops, sorry, my bad. Anyway, hey! He smiled nervously, then looked away, giving a slight shrug. Giovanni. Most call me Rick, Gio. Ryth, I muttered. Yeah, I figured that already. He smiled and nodded towards the door. I wanted to run, and when I say run, I wanted to haul ass out of this place and keep going. I waited for the look as I stepped outside and into the corridor. Heat rose, finding its way along my neck to pool in my face. The wince would be next when he settled his gaze on the mark on my cheek. Then would come the questions, and finally, when he was amongst his friends, the taunts. "Oh, okay," he stuttered, then stopping, his voice quieting. "Your classes." He stuttered, like actually stuttered. He glanced at my shocked expression, then looked away. "It's fine most of the time, just comes out when I'm nervous." "You stutter when you're nervous?" He licked his lips and nodded. "Yeah." "Why the hell are you nervous around me?" His cheek reddened as he looked away. "Oh shit, okay." That need to flee froze inside of me as I focused on the guy. He was tall, muscled, obviously popular. But was he? Would a popular guy escort someone around on their first day? Someone they didn't even know? "So it looks like you have Harkins with me first up." He tried to change the subject. "She can be a hard ass, especially if you're late, so we better get going." I just followed, feeling that storm inside me slip away. Maybe it wasn't so bad here. Maybe I could do the last 6 months of school and finish, I don't know, normal, like everyone else. The thought of that excited me. I followed him to the first class, sliding in behind his seat after he sat at the desk. Others glanced my way, but they quickly turned their attention back to getting through the build-up to exams, and hardly anyone paid me any mind. By the time the day was half over, I was basically invisible. But still awkward as hell when the bell rang for lunch. I glanced at Gio, then to the loud roar in the hallways that filled in an instant. "Thanks for showing me around," I smiled, stumbling out of the way as a girl shoved past in a huff. I glanced his way, waiting for him to just turn and leave me behind. After all, he had other friends to sit with, right? "You hungry?" He glanced my way and motioned towards the cafeteria. Sitting amongst a group of assholes who basically picked you apart, not my idea of a good time. I shook my head. "Thanks, but no." "Good. I'm grabbing something from the vending machine and heading outside. You want in?" "Yes." Relief washed over me. "Thank you." He gave me a hint of a smile, then strode to where a bank of vending machines lined the wall. I grabbed my card from the wallet of my phone case and pressed it against the reader. He glanced my way, his brow rising. "What you gonna buy me for lunch, Ryth?" I just shrugged. Figured it was the least I could do. His grin grew wider, showing teeth before he turned back and cracked his knuckles. "Well, all right, in that case." I let out a bark of laughter, catching him grin and glance my way. He grabbed a sandwich and a cola and stepped to the side, waiting for me. I followed suit as he waited, then grabbed my food and motioned towards the exit. It was a relief to get outside. We found a secluded table and sat, and while we chatted about classes and the start of our lives in less than 6 months, I actually felt happy. "So, you moved in with the Bankses, huh?" he asked, then took a gulp of his cola. My happiness dulls as I nodded. "It's only temporary. Those guys can be real assholes," he muttered, casting me a cautious gaze. "You want to be careful of them." Careful? Tobias pushed into my mind. "You're mine, Ryth." "Yeah," I muttered, forcing my mind to focus on Nick and Caleb instead. "Like I said, it's just temporary until we get on our feet." He glanced my way, and I can tell he wanted to say more, but instead he just drained his cola as the bell rang. "Looks like the party's over." Speaking of party, Hannah Kressler's throwing one this weekend. Hers are pretty notorious if you want to go. My stomach dropped. "Like on a date?" He just gave a shrug and pushed off from sitting on the top of the table. "Date? No date. I don't care." Date or no date, as in my first ever, my pulse sped at the thought. I wanted to say, "Why me?" Or even look in the mirror to see if that hideous mark that didn't fade under foundation had somehow disappeared. But I knew it hadn't. Even with the stutter, the other girls would be clamoring over him, so why ask me? "You gonna cry, little mouse?" Tobias pushed into my head. I couldn't get him out. Not his words or the feel of his goddamn hands on my body. Sure, the words slipped free as I met his gaze. Why the hell not? "Really?" He looked shocked, then slowly smiled. "Fuck yeah." I had no idea how I was going to get there, and even though I had my license for months now, I was betting asking I was betting taking Creed's Mercedes was out of the question. I felt bolder as I strode to class beside Gio. Hell, I might even take Tobias's Jeep. Swipe his keys from his room while he was showering. I'd be gone before he knew it was missing. Let him see how much of a mouse I was then. That thought stayed with me all through the afternoon periods, and when the last bell rang, I was almost sad to leave. We made our way through the stampede to the front doors of the building, then outside to the bright blue skies and fresh air. Same time tomorrow? Gio cast a glance my way as he headed for the drop-off point. The deep rumbling of the Mustang overpowered every other engine noise, drawing my gaze and Gio's. He scowled when he saw the car, and I swore I saw a flicker of annoyance. But he turned his gaze towards me, and in an instant that flare was gone, turning into a smile for me again. Maybe for once I'd actually met a real friend. Sure. He gave me a wink, one that sent a flutter through my chest, and strode away. Leaving me alone, I watched him for a second before turning back to the chip magnet. Nick waved his hand, and from behind the wheel, drawing my attention. As if I could miss him. I didn't even care that others stared as I opened the passenger door and climbed in. You're smiling, Nick glanced my way as I pulled the door closed. That's a little troubling, considering it's your first day. The corner of my lips twitched higher, but he wasn't putting the car into gear, not yet. That guy you were with, who was he? I shrugged as annoyance flared. No one. Possessiveness burst inside me. Why did he have to know? Couldn't I keep anything to myself? I didn't get his name. Just be careful, Ree, okay, he muttered and shoved the car into gear, pulling out of the waiting zone with a roar. For attention. My pulse kicked hard as I grabbed the armrest as we turned sharply before surging forward. Ree. I glanced at Nick as he watched the street, his black t-shirt molding against his hard body. Ripped black jeans rode low on his hips, and Gio's warning came back to me. Those guys can be real assholes. You want to be careful of them. I'd been at their house just over a week occupying the same space. Tobias was an asshole for sure, a goddamn bully. But Nick was nice, and Caleb too when I saw him. Nick must have felt my focus and glanced my way. What? Nothing. Heat raced to my cheeks. He hadn't made fun of me, hadn't even looked at my cheek. That intense gaze that looked eerily like Tobias's, fixed on mine, then glanced away. You up for a shake? I know a place. A shake? I smiled. You know I'm not a kid, right? He chuckled, muttered something under his breath, and jerked the wheel hard to the right, tearing across the street to somewhere else. Yeah, I know. He grinned and reached across the seat to jab me in the ribs. I laughed. He was actually a really good guy. He drove to some small cafe and pulled into the alley, plunging us into dimness before muttering, "Wait here," and climbed out. He commanded me, like I was his to boss around. I should be pissed at that. I should be doing the opposite. I glanced at the handle, almost seeing myself yanking the damn thing and doing whatever hell I wanted to, defying him. My breath turned shallow as I watched Nick disappear in the side mirror. That's what I wanted. I wanted to defy him. Defy Mum and Tobias. A surge of something dangerous tore through me, making me wiggle in the seat in an attempt to find relief. I reached up, brushed my fingers against my breast, and pretended to fix my hair. But I was hard, tight, and excited. I risked a glance into the rearview mirror as a flush of shame came over me. My heart was booming. Sitting there in Nick's car with his growl still ringing in my ears, waiting for him to come back at any moment, still that heat lingered, unwanted and unneeded, drawing my focus. I looked at the mirror once more and reached down, sliding my hand between my thighs. Tight black shirt, ripped jeans, that dark, dangerous stare. You want me to drive you, Ryth? I pressed my fingers against my crease, drawing in the deep, rich scent of the leather. I didn't understand this hunger. That burn moved deeper as I grew wet. I didn't normally do this, not out in the open, only in private under the glare of a laptop screen in the dark. Dark, dirty, The seduction consumed me like a fantasy. I'll drive you on the end of my cock. I closed my eyes and curled my fingers, pressing harder. My breaths deepened, tearing from my chest as that need roared almost. The snap of the door handle wrenched me out of the moment. I jerked my hand out from between my legs, my cheeks growing brighter as the door opened and Nick sank in behind the wheel, his hand laden with 2 massive milkshakes and a brown paper bag with grease darkening in the bottom clutched in his teeth. God, had he seen me? He handed me the shake, then pulled the bag from his mouth. I hope you're hungry, he muttered, his tone deep and husky. He wouldn't meet my eyes when he dropped the bag in between us, just stared straight ahead and scowled, then leaned forward, starting the car before shoving it into reverse. Thanks, I murmured when he braked to a stop at the end of the alley, checked the traffic and drove away. Silence filled the car as I took a sip. I snuck glances, trying to get a bead on his state of mind as a heartbeat pounded in my head. He didn't see me. He couldn't have, not over the bag in his mouth. I took another draw on the thick malted choc shake and glanced his way again. Stop staring, Ryth. He murmured, his gaze fixed on the road. I expected us to go somewhere, some kind of park or lookout, somewhere we could enjoy the food and the drinks, but we didn't. We headed home. Their home. When we pulled up to the driveway, there was an expensive-looking gold Lexus parked just outside the closed gates. We have a visitor? I couldn't help but ask. Dad, not us. He stopped at the gate and rolled down his window, then punched in the code on the box and pulled in. Lawyer's meeting with him and your mum all goddamn day. Oh. My brows shot upwards as I glanced at the car, excitement coursing through my veins. It was the first sign of progress I had seen. Hope hummed as we pulled up and parked next to the black Jeep. I didn't even think about Tobias or what happened in Nick's car as I pawed the door handle and climbed out. Ryth, Nick called behind me, I got you damn fries. Food was the last thing on my mind. I gripped the shake and my laptop and charged to the door, turned the handle and shoved it wide. The place was quiet. It was always quiet. I lifted my gaze to the study on the second floor and climbed the stairs. The thud of the front door sounded before Nick's heavy footsteps thudded behind me. I'll eat them all if you're not careful. Go ahead, I threw over my shoulder as I caught the sound of voices from the study. I stopped in front of the closed study door, my heart hammering. I wouldn't go in there if I were you. Nick stopped behind me. Lawyer talk is boring anyways. Come on, come to my room and we can discuss your first damn day at Duke's. I licked my lips, listening to their muffled words drifting through the door. I wanted to cross the hall and open it, wanted to know what was going on. Were they finally getting Dad out? Was that why the other lawyers had been there all day? Ryth, Nick urged. I stepped away and followed him, even as my mind raced. What had happened between Mum and Creed had been real, but it didn't have to be a deal breaker. Marriages survived all the time, even if one of them had been unfaithful. Mum and Dad hadn't been happy in a long time, but this could be our fresh start, a way to make things better. I'll be better. I followed Nick, my mind fixed on the image of us being one happy family once more, and stepped into his room. And that's the end of chapter 8. A little bit racy for Ryth, didn't see that coming, but you know, we all have our needs and our wants. And if something lit the fire from Tobias, then so be it. But yeah, until next time, smutty reading. Love, love.